You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Hello and welcome to Theater 100, Television, Film, and Theater. My name is Naomi Buckley. I'm the instructor for this course, and I want to welcome you to our very first broadcast for this course for the semester of spring 2020. Today, we're going to be going over the course requirements. We're going to be talking a little bit about what this course is going to be about, and then at the very end of the broadcast today, we are going to be looking at taking a first look at an introduction to film and looking at some elements of film as well. So I do want to welcome you to the course and just give you a great overview over what we're going to be doing today. I do want to remind you that every time you tune in, if you tune in at this time from 12 to about 2, we might not always go to 2 every week, but from this time period, we are live and online. So if you're watching right now, you can give us a call. I am live in the studio right now. You can talk to me. Here's the number, 310-928-7330. You can also type in live to make any comments or questions you might have at askdhtvlive@gmail.com. So those are two great ways to communicate with us and for us to have an interactive experience if you're watching at the Thursday broadcast live from 12 to 2. If you're not, if you're watching this in an archived state or you're watching it on YouTube later, unfortunately, I'm doing something else right now and it isn't live, so those phone numbers and all of that, you may get through, but you won't get through during the broadcast when I'm here. It'll be somebody else. So again, those are only if you're tuning in live on Thursdays from 12 to 2. Because this is live and online, if you are watching, I always like to pose a question that helps you guys that are watching live here to kind of be able to participate and interact. And we do have a question today that we're going to be posing to you guys. If you'd like to type in, you can type in at that askdhtvlive@gmail, or you can phone us to answer this question. How is the experience of watching theater different from watching film or television? That's sort of what the entire course is going to be about, is us thinking about what are the differences between theater and television and film. How does that impact us as audience members, as well as how does it impact the structure, the way it's composed, the way it's made, and thinking about those differences is part of what the course is about. But I know that all of you probably have had some experience with some kind of live performance as well as with television and definitely with film. And so I'd like to hear what you think some of the differences are, and give you an opportunity to type in and comment today as we're working. As well as the question that's there on the bottom of the screen, I do want to just say you don't have to answer that question today because we are going to be going over so much of the course material. If you're watching live and you have a question about something in the syllabus, you have a question about something I said, now is a perfect opportunity for you to type in, ask that question, and I can try and answer it online live for everybody right now. But of course, you can always email me through my school email address too, to ask those questions later. But this is just a great format to do that too, because everybody will get to hear the answer. You never know if the question that you're wondering is something that somebody else is wondering too. So don't feel like you're limited to that question. It can be other things that you want to type in with or call in with. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself before we get going. Again, my name is Naomi Buckley. I am the instructor for this course. I'm a faculty member here at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I've been teaching here for about 13 years. I've actually been doing this online course. Me and one of the staff members that work here were just talking about how I've been doing this online course for about 10 years, which, my gosh, is a long time. I enjoy teaching this course. I think it's a really fun format. I love being able to have this kind of live interaction with you guys, and it's really, really fun when you type in and you call. So please, I hope that some of you will do that every week. It makes the time in the studio much more fun to do. I am a graduate of Cal State Dominguez Hills. I did my undergraduate work here many years ago. I graduated with a BA in Theater Arts, and then some years later I went on to do my master's degree in London at Mountain View Academy of Theater Arts. I teach a variety of classes here on campus. I teach acting, directing, World Theater History 2, script analysis, Theater Revolt, creative dramatics, speech, as well as this class in a live lecture setting. So I teach kind of the entire gamut. I also direct, usually once a year here. I did that last semester, so I'm not doing it this semester. And I also teach for Orange Coast College sometimes, as well as LA Harbor College. One of the big creative things I do, like I said, every year, sometimes twice a year, is that I direct. So when we talk about, acting and directing, that's something that I'm also doing on a professional basis and have a lot of knowledge about. Some of my favorite shows that I've directed, whether it be here and other places, are Spring Awakening, Cabaret, the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And last semester, like I said, I directed here on campus, and I directed Asuncion. If any of you were here on campus and got to see that, that was my last directing project. And I will be directing next season as well on campus, although I don't know exactly yet what I'm going to be doing. So I'm very active in the world of theater. I don't just teach about it, I actually participate in it, and I love the theater. I've been doing it since I was a little girl. So again, this course is about the three different performance forms: theater, film, and television. Our main focus is going to be on theater, and that's just primarily because it's the area that a lot of people are the least familiar with, but also because it is the foundational performance art. Everything else sprung out of theater. Theater was the first form, and then obviously next came film, moving pictures, and then came television. So it's always good to go back to those foundational structures. It's a good way to understand all the other things as well. One of the other things we're going to be looking at as we look at television, theater, film are the elements of production, meaning how do these things get made? How do they get produced? And so this course focuses on not just the actors or the plays, but also the playwrights who write the plays, the performers who perform in the plays, the directors who direct, and the designers who create the scenery, as well as the technical directors, stage managers, soundboard operators, and crews. So the objective of all of that is just to give you an appreciation for just really the massive amount of work that goes into any of these things that you see, whether it be a play, or whether it be a film, or a television show that you watch. There are often many, many more people working behind the scenes to make that television show or film or play happen than there are that you see on the screen or on the stage. And I think it's important to appreciate that. And also because you never know, as you're watching, so one of these things might pique your interest and you might think, hey, that sounds like a fun job. Maybe I'd like to do that one day. So I know that most of you probably don't go and see live theater for a variety of reasons. One probably primarily being cost. It's very expensive to see live theater these days. But again, we're going to focus a lot on it because it is the foundational art, and because in finding out more about theater and the way that theater evolved and the way that it has influenced the other two forms, we're going to actually be able to learn more about film and television and the structures and where they came from. And theater is really designed to make us reflect on who we are, and it has such a great potential for motivating social dialogues and actually creating change in the world, just like a good film and good television can do as well. So we are going to be focusing a lot on that, but it's because it's really important, and it's actually a foundational aspect of our world. Maybe you never go see a piece of theater. Maybe, well, you will this semester, but maybe you never, want to be an actor or do any of those things. But at its heart, theater, film, and television are really all about storytelling. And storytelling is something that has existed since the beginning of time, since the time that humans could speak. They've been telling stories to each other. And it's an essential part of how we connect to other people. And it's an essential part of how we lessen our own loneliness in the world. So that first originated really through the form of theater. And so it's a really important thing to start to think about these performance styles and the art itself, and why it's been around for so long, and why has it persisted, and what makes it so essential to human life. So every week, we're going to have the live broadcast on Thursdays from 12 to about 2. Some days it might end a little sooner, but it will never go over 2 o'clock. And some of you will be able to tune in at that time because you don't have anything else going on, which is great because there's some benefits to that I'll talk about in a second. And some of you may not. in which case you'll need to watch the archive broadcast. It's very important that you watch the broadcast every week, even if you can't watch it live. And the reason for that is that in the broadcast, I will often be talking about certain things and giving definitions of certain terms that actually don't appear anywhere else. They don't appear anywhere else on Blackboard. They don't appear anywhere in your textbook. So in order to get really good grades on your quizzes and on your midterm and on your final exam, you want to make sure that you watch the broadcast every week, because there is information in these broadcasts that aren't going to be touched on anywhere else. And if you don't watch it, it's going to become problematic for you in terms of being able to get really good scores on your quizzes and your exams, and sometimes being able to do your discussion boards. In addition, oftentimes there's things that I talk about in the broadcast in terms of like maybe I push back a due date on something, or I clarify an assignment a little bit more because I've been receiving a lot of questions about it. And those things, again, are going to be essential in order for you to understand how to complete the work effectively and how to get the best grade. So it really is important that you watch the broadcast and that you watch it all the way through, even if you can't watch it live. If you can't watch it live, which is perfectly fine, it's not required that you watch it live, then it will be important for you to understand how to access the archived broadcast. There is a little tab in Blackboard that says how to view the class. So it tells you how to view it live, but it also, I think, I'll have to go back and look, it also has some instructions for how to view the archived version. Now, even if you don't read that, it's going to be really simple, because in Blackboard, I'm going to create a tab that either says something like playlists or broadcasts, and if you click on that tab, you're going to find for every single week, you're going to find a little section and a link to where you can go and watch the broadcast live, and you'll simply go in there, find the broadcast you want to watch, click on it, and it'll take you to the site where you can watch it. Now, the thing with watching it after the fact, after being live, is that it does sometimes take a little bit of time for us to get it up onto the internet where you can access it. And that can be because we're, we show video clips, and sometimes some of those video clips are fine during the live broadcast, but we have to edit them out when we put them into the archive version because of copywriting or whatever. So it's important that you be patient, because it's not going to sometimes happen. It's not going to happen, as soon as this broadcast is over, it's not going to suddenly blink up into Blackboard. So it usually takes 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours for us to get that link up. Just try and be patient with us. We try to do it as quickly as we can. It's another good reason why if you can watch it live, it's better, because most of our tests and assignments are due on Sunday. So if you think it takes us 24 hours, that's sometime on Friday. If it takes us 48 hours, then we might not get it in until Saturday. And then, of course, then you're kind of stuck in a position where if there's a test that you have to take on Sunday, and now you've got a very limited time to watch it, right? So it's always better if you can watch live, but I understand not everybody can. This might conflict with another class you have or work or whatever. And we'll make every effort to get it up as quickly as we can. And, you just have to make the effort to watch it, okay? Also, when we're going over in class, we often are talking about a lot of things. We're helping to explain the reading for the week. We're elaborating on the reading. We're showing you video clips that relate to the reading. And in addition, I might be explaining assignments, like I said, or elaborating on things that are important for you to be able to do really well. The last and final reason why you should watch is extra credit. During the class, I always pose a question, sometimes two questions that you can either call in or type in to answer. And anybody that does that during the course, and you can only do it during the live broadcast, anyone that does that is going to get 20 points of extra credit. So that is almost equivalent to one of your discussion boards each week. So I think it's a really good thing, even if you can only tune in live a couple times, because it provides a nice little extra credit cushion for you if you end up not doing so well on a quiz one time, or you have to miss something, miss a discussion board one week, or miss a quiz. You can accumulate some extra credit points to kind of cushion the blow of that and help keep your grade up. So in the past, I have sometimes allowed people to email me with questions or comments, But this semester, we're going to keep it only to the live broadcast. I apologize for that. But what happens is it just becomes this whole other massive amount of work that I have to go through and make sure. And I get a ton of emails all the time. So finding yours can be a problem, and keeping track of it I don't have a TA for this class, so I had to do it all on my own. And it becomes problematic. And really, the whole point of the extra credit is to encourage you to tune in when we're here live and watch if you can. So again, even if maybe it's not possible all the time, even if you can do it just a couple times during the semester, it's really useful. And like I said, when you call in, when you write in, not today, but any other day during the rest of the semester, if you call or type in, we take your name down. Even if I don't read your question online, even if I don't address it during the time that we're here, you'll still get the 20 points of extra credit. I tally that all up at the end of the semester. I add it into your grade, and it can be a real benefit to you in terms of keeping your grade up or even pushing it up to a higher level. Okay, so we already have someone who's typed in today to ask a question, and I love this because it's not answering the question I posed, which is totally fine. The question is, do I need a textbook for this class? The answer is yes. The textbook is in the syllabus, the one that you need to purchase. It's called The Theater Experience by Edwin Wilson. I recommend purchasing the 11th edition. That is the edition that I'm working from. It is not the newest edition. The newest edition, I believe, is the 13th edition, might even be a 14th edition now. And you are more than welcome to buy that edition. It's available to you online. You can purchase it lots of different places online. But I would recommend the 11th just because the chapter numbers that I use and the headings that I use are all exactly the same. The book is really not that different from edition to edition. The only problem that you might find is if I'm saying, read chapters 2 and 6 for acting, those chapter numbers might not be the same in the 13th edition. They might be actually chapters 3 and 7. So if you do that, it's totally fine. But you just need to pay attention to the headings then and the subjects that we're going over and make sure you're doing the reading based on those, not based on the chapter numbers, right? So it's really up to you what edition you want to purchase. But any edition from the 11th edition to whatever the newest edition is perfectly acceptable for you to purchase. You do need to purchase it. Most of the tests are based on the chapter reading with some lecture stuff that's thrown in from the broadcasts, but that's pretty much it, right? So if you've done the reading, even if you didn't get a chance to watch the broadcast, you're still going to be able to get a really good grade on that test. If you haven't done the reading, it's going to be really difficult for you to get a good grade on the test. So you do need to purchase the book and have it available to you. And I think as long as you do that in the next couple weeks, you should be fine, okay? So that's the answer to the question of do I need a book? And if anyone else has any questions like that, please feel free to type in, please ask, or if there's something I'm saying that isn't clear to you, or you just want to ask a question that is an addendum to that, please feel free. You can call in 310-928-7330, or you can type in your question at AskTheHTVLive@gmail.com, and I promise you that we will get to all of those today because they're important, and I don't want to skip over anything because your questions are important. So the question we are asking today, just as a kind of way into our subject, is how is the experience of watching theater different from watching film or television? So again, if any of you want to type in today, unfortunately today we're not going to be giving any extra credit, but next week, it'll be good practice for next week where we'll start giving out the extra credit for answering and calling in or typing in for these questions. So what does make theater unique? Theater is different from television and film, and we're going to think about a lot this semester what makes it unique and what makes it different. Well, one of the things that makes it really different is that it's immediacy. Theater is live. It takes place right in front of us. We're sitting inside of the space where the performance is happening. And in fact, we're not just sitting there, we're actually participating. And what I mean by that is not that you're, going to climb up onto the stage and suddenly become part of the action, but that you have a dynamic relationship as an audience member with the performers. In other words, if an actor is on stage and they're giving a serious, dramatic monologue about something and the entire theater is dead quiet, and suddenly somebody starts having a coughing fit and can't stop coughing, that's going to impact the performer on stage. They may even stop for a second if they feel like they can't be heard. And it's also going to impact all the people that are sitting around you. There's a couple funny instances actually lately, maybe you heard about them in the news, of people being on Broadway watching theater performances and answering their phone while they're sitting there watching a performance, and actors actually stopping the entire performance and saying, hey, put your phone away, right? So when we're in a live theater experience, those kinds of things happen, and you're impacting the performers. And in fact, the performers are impacting you too, right? Hopefully, if they're doing their job. They're making you feel things. They're making you laugh. They're making you cry. They're making you, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're making you bored. But still, you're having this interactive, dynamic experience that is different from what happens when you're watching film and television. How is it different? It's different because when I sit down in a movie theater to watch the new Star Wars, it doesn't matter if I laugh or if I cry or if I shout at the screen or I throw something at the screen while an actor is doing something. My reaction has no impact on the performances that are happening in front of me, because those performances happened months ago, sometimes years ago, in a completely different place with a completely different set of people around them. Nothing that I do as an audience member is going to have an impact on those performances or the sequence of events that's unfolding in front of me in this film, and the same is true for television. So it's not a dynamic relationship that happens when we're in a movie theater or we're watching a film at home or we're watching TV at home. That experience that is happening on the screen is what we call dead, right? It's canned. It's already happened. It happened a long time ago. It can influence you. It can impact you, but you will never impact it. You will never have any kind of impact on what's happening to the actors or the performers on the screen. So that's a really big difference between theater and film, is that in a live theatrical experience, we do impact the performers. We have this kind of symbiotic relationship, this what we call a dynamic relationship, right? Where the audience and the performers interact together, and they reshape the performance in that way, right? Another thing that makes theater different from television and film is that in the theater, we have the willing suspension of disbelief. It's not that in film and television that we don't use our willing suspension of disbelief, because we do, obviously. If I go back to the example of Star Wars, we all know that there's no such thing as the Empire, there's no such thing as Jedi, there's no real Baby Yoda anywhere. I mean, there is, but it's a puppet, right? But we buy into the reality. For the time that we're watching it, we accept that these things are true and that they're happening, right? The thing is that with theater, that willing suspension of disbelief is even stronger, because when we're watching something on film, they're creating all of these special effects and they're on location in all these different places, and there's all this magic that's happening in a way that really is trying to create this realism, right? It's easier for us to buy in, right? So if someone's going to have a car chase, they really have a car chase, and we watch them having it. In fact, it's not a car chase, right? It's a highly choreographed piece of performance in which people oftentimes aren't actually even driving the cars. Sometimes they're on flatbed trucks being driven around, right? So it looks like they're driving cars. But, but we don't see that. So we're able to buy into the reality much more readily. But in the theater, we really have to suspend our disbelief, don't we? Because if there's going to be a car chase on the stage, well, that's going to look nothing like a real car chase would in real life, right? If someone is going to, get shot on the stage, we might be only several feet away from them, and we can tell that they're not really shot, right? And that's not really a gun. And so we have to really, really buy into the performance, and we really have to be willing to suspend our disbelief in order to allow ourselves to be affected by the story and to appreciate the artistic work. And so the illusion that we create inside of the theater asks much more of the audience than something like film or television does. But it's also asks us to use our imaginations more, right? We really have to engage our imaginations in a way that we don't with film and television. And that's one of the really wonderful things about the theater is that experience that we have with another group of people, all of these people sitting with us together. We're all using our imaginations at the same time to create and buy into this reality. That's really something very special that you don't have in the same way when you watch film and television. Of course, as I said, there's the communication and the dynamic relationship between the audience and the actors, And that's really, really unique. Of course, theater is also entertainment, and it's a very unique style of entertainment. Again, it happens live. It happens in a specific space. It happens with costumes and stage lights and sound effects that are different than you would see in television and film. And the things that we can do in the theater are very different from the things that we can do in television and film. And it's not that one's better or worse, it's just that it's very different. So the experience of that also becomes very different. Theater is very collaborative. It's a collaborative effort. And of course, so is film and so is television. But the difference with theater is that because it happens live, right, and it's happening all at once, right, everybody who works on the theatrical piece is working all at the same time, right? So the actors are performing, the stage manager is doing his or her job at the same time, the lighting operator is doing his or her job at the same time, the stagehands are doing their job at the same time. It's all happening at the same time in this moment to create this theatrical experience. Whereas in television and film, you have a lot of people who are on set and who are working as the piece is being created. But then once the piece has been filmed and it's all on film, all of those people for the most part go away. And there's a whole nother set of people that become involved with what we call the post-production elements. It's not that all of them, the director is still involved in some of these, but a lot of those people go and now they're working on a different film while this film is now what we call post-production. And then that's where a whole nother set of people come into play in terms of editing and sound editing and color correction and all these other things that have to happen to the film before it's actually released to an audience. And so even though there are collaborative elements within television and film, oftentimes there's also really different sets of people working at any one point in time in the film's creation, and those people may never meet, right? The dolly grip guy may never meet the editor or the Foley artist who does the sound later, right? They may never have any contact with each other. Whereas in theater, it doesn't work that way. If you're working on a show, you're usually working on it from near the beginning to relatively, through not very far into the rehearsal process, and then you're kind of there with the show until the show closes, right? So that kind of collaboration and the contact that you have with all those people is a really different thing. And it's why a lot of times in the theater, we like to call it a theater family, right? And on shows, we become these families, depending like Asuncion family, Ubu Roy family, right? Because you work so much and so intensely with these people, you really get to know them. And that experience is a high stress, high stakes kind of experience, and you really bond with these people and you're working them for weeks and weeks and hours on end. And it really does create this little sense of community as you're doing different shows. So that is very different from film and television. Also, theater is life's double. It's a reflection of life. And it's a reflection of life in a way that is different from film and television because it is live, right? And that's the way life happens. Life is live. I don't get to, if I make a mistake, if I say something to my crush and it comes out wrong, I don't get to say, cut, let's try that again, right? I have to just deal with it in the moment and figure out how to negotiate that moment. And that's the way theater is. Theater is live. If an actor messes up a line, if they do something that they weren't supposed to do, something happens that wasn't, something falls or happens in a way that wasn't supposed to happen, the actors have to deal with that live in the moment, just like they do in real life. And there's something about that that is very, very different in its experience from film and television, which again, both are these kind of dead, canned things that have been filmed and highly curated before they come to you, right? There aren't a lot of mistakes in films usually, although if you have a keen eye, sometimes you can see continuity mistakes, right? You see they have a shot of Steve Carell, his hair's like this, and then the next shot you see his hair's like this or something, right? Somebody missed that into the continuity area. That's error, that's what we call that. But most of the time, there are very few errors like that happen. This piece has been highly curated. They did multiple shots of this scene. They took the very best one, and then they cut it and recut it and put it together in this really specific way to create this really specific, tight story that you get to experience and doesn't feel really curated at all. It just feels like it's happening naturally and flowing. But really, it's this really, really highly edited, highly curated piece of art. And it's not that theater isn't like that in some ways, but just that because of the nature of theater and it being live, those things can't happen in the same way, right? So as a director, and that's really primarily what I do nowadays, when I'm directing my shows in rehearsal, one of the things I'm always thinking about is how is the audience going to receive this? What is the audience going to see here, right? What are they going to be focusing on? And I want to make sure as a director that the audience's focus is always where I want it to be, right? That they're paying attention to the things that I want them to pay attention to. And I do my very best to do that, as most theater directors do. But the problem is that like I don't get to sit next to you the entire time you're watching my show and say, hey, what you should be looking at is that guy over there, right? I don't get to dictate to you where you're going to look. You can look anywhere on that set. You could be looking down at your feet. You could be looking at another actor who's just sitting there listening to what the other two actors are saying. So as an audience member, when you're seeing a piece of live theater, you get to dictate where you look, even though the director may be really trying to focus you on a particular area, you still get to look wherever you want. Whereas in a piece of film, if I want you to look at, Steve Carell's watch, then I take a shot with the camera that is only of Steve Carell's watch, and I show that to you. And when you see that, you don't get to look anywhere else, right? You don't get to look at Steve Carell's pants or at his hair or who's behind him. You just are going to look at his watch because that's what the director wanted you to see in that moment. So again, going back to this idea of the theater being live stubble and a kind of a more accurate example of that than film, even though a lot of times we watch film and we feel like there's so much more realism in it, the reality is that what you watch on film is actually very, very selective in what it shows to you. And those realities, again, are highly curated. And the shots that you're being shown are highly curated. They're done, if they're done well, it feels like completely natural. But actually, when we go to a piece of live theater, it is much more like life, isn't it? Because in life, you get to look wherever you want. In life, mistakes happen. Life is happening in front of you right now. It's not curated at all. You don't get to decide who walks in front of you, how long the line is when you arrive at the lunch counter. Those things happen as part of this whole messy experience that we call life. And in so many ways, live theater is a much more accurate depiction of what happens to us in real life than film or television. So it's one of the things that really makes it a unique experience and something that's worthwhile. One of the other things that makes theater really wonderful is that its focus is on human beings and the human experience, right? And it's not that film and television don't talk about human beings or human experiences, but when we come to the theater, really what we've come to see are the actors, and the performances that the actors are going to do. And when we go to television, we watch film, sometimes we're watching for the actors. That's absolutely true. But sometimes we're also watching because, like, to go back to Star Wars, because we love the Star Wars universe. We love the special effects. We want to go watch an action film. We want to see lots of great fight sequences and car chases and explosions, right? And all those things are not about human beings. Those are about kind of fun, spectacle that's entertaining to watch, but really doesn't tell us anything about what it means to be human or the human experience. And theater is, by, again, virtue of the way that it's performed and where it's performed and how it's done, has to be about people. It has to be about that. It really can't be about anything else. We can't do these kinds of special effects that you can do in film and in television. And so the focus of theater is about people, and it's about watching actors perform characters, maybe characters that we love, that we've seen before. Like if we go to see a Shakespeare play, we love Hamlet, we want to see Hamlet, or we love Othello, we want to see Othello, we want to see this actor do that role, right? And sometimes it's simply about seeing a story about human beings and what happens to us and the experiences that we have and how we negotiate life and these relationships. And again, it's not that film can't be about that or isn't about that, but that theater is primarily about that. It is really only about that. And because of that, when we go to the theater, those are the real reasons why we go. We go to see those relationships, that human connection, that story about what it means to be human played out on the stage. So why do people go to the theater? We just kind of talked about one of the reasons, but of course, one of the big reasons is storytelling. We love stories as humans. We've been telling them since we could talk. They're the way that we connect to each other. They help to alleviate our sense of existential dread and our loneliness, as the fear that maybe our lives are not meaningful. Connection to other people through stories is how we overlay meaning onto our lives, right? And the art of theater, because it is so much about the human experience and what it means to be human in human relationships, the theater is uniquely suited to tell those kinds of stories. The kinds of stories that are about what it means to be human, why relationships are important, how to be a better human, right? And how to negotiate life and all the big things that happen to us while we're here. There's also the skill of execution, right? We love to watch, and this is true about everything, not just theater, right? We love to watch people doing things that we know we couldn't do, right? This high level of whatever. I mean, we watch football, NFL, for those of you that are big football fans, because you can't tell here, but I'm a very small person. I'm a very petite person. I'm about 5 foot tall. I weigh about 100 pounds on a good day, right? I would never in my life, no matter whatever, even if I was highly skilled, I'm never going to be a football player, right? And so watching something like football or these people that have these extraordinary skills that we know we don't have is really, really fascinating to us. It's very entertaining. And especially people who can do things so well, right? So we love watching people executing skilled work at a very, very high level, especially in ways that we think that, we're kind of incapable of. And the theater does that for us, especially when we see a wonderful performance by actors that are just truly skilled at their craft. People who are up there and we just believe that they are who they say they are and they're making us feel all of these things. That's not an easy task to do, and it's not one that a lot of us could do, even though sometimes we might think to ourselves, well, I could do that. I promise you that if you actually tried to do it, most of you would realize that it's much, much harder than you realize, right? So we appreciate that. We appreciate it. We also appreciate the courage that we realize it takes to do something like that. One of the number one fears that people have is public speaking. And so you can imagine acting is just basically public speaking times 10, because it's not just saying a speech, it's about like being vulnerable on stage in front of a bunch of strangers who might laugh at you, right? And so we appreciate the courage that it takes for actors to get up in front of a bunch of strangers who they've never met before, who have these high expectations about what this show is going to do for them, and to be vulnerable, to act natural, to put themselves out there in a way that most people would not be willing to do. And that is a really high level of skill when people do it really well. It's amazing, right? And we appreciate that. We love watching things like that, just in the same way that we love watching a really skilled basketball player or a really skilled ballerina. That aspect of the skill of execution is there inside of watching a really, really well-constructed theatrical experience or really wonderful performance. We watch also to have a fresh perspective on things, to see things with different eyes, or to be taught something or look at something in a new way. And that's something that we get through all kinds of different stories. But again, the theater has this unique way of being able to present these human stories in this really, really human way that can really reach us and help us to see the world through new eyes. And sometimes we go because there is a spiritual aspect to sitting in this room and the lights go down and we're all quiet and we're going to watch this kind of magical experience happen in front of us together, yeah? These kinds of experiences, these community experiences, go back all the way to the beginning of human history. And where they started was in religious activities, rituals, right? The community would come together to do something, some sort of ritual, some sort of activity that was going to please the gods, bring favor, cast out bad spirits, right? Teach us something about how to make the gods happier, or how to, do something that the gods want us to do. Even now, when you go to church, church is about gathering together with a group of people, right? You all sit and you watch somebody, you watch the choir sing, you watch the pastor give his sermon. And there is something very, very special and spiritual about that experience in terms of sharing an experience with a community of people and watching something together that is hopefully really, really good and can really teach you something, right? And we go for that experience. And in the best possible situations where we're watching, something that is just a really, really wonderful piece of art, we do experience that together, and it's what hopefully keeps us coming back to the theater and draws us to that experience again, right? All right, Diana has a question here as well, which again, please guys, this isn't answering the question I posed, but it's totally fine. I want you guys to type in if you have any questions like this. She says, how much of rehearsal does it take before performing a show? So that's a really good question. It depends on the show, and it depends on the type of actors. If we're working in a professional setting with a bunch of professional people who've done this for a really long time, or if we're working on a college campus or a community campus. The average is usually somewhere between 5 and 6 weeks, right? Even here on campus, normally my rehearsal period for like a 2-hour show, hour and a half, 2-hour show is about 6 weeks is a good average here. And that doesn't usually include tech week, which is the week where we're kind of putting all the technical elements into the show. A very professional show can put a show together in as little as 3 weeks, right? So you might, if you're going to perform at the Mark Taper or be involved in a show at the Mark Taper or the Amundsen or someplace like that, if you get hired to do that, you might put your whole show together in 3 weeks. And there's 2 reasons for that. There's one, that you have people who are now able to be here for 6 to 8 hours every day rehearsing, as opposed to here like in the community or on a campus where I only get my actors for 3 to 4 hours every night. But also you're dealing with experienced people who have a lot of skill and facility. They are able to, execute things much faster, right? If you're doing a musical, it usually takes a little bit longer because you can imagine there's lots of different elements now that the performers need to know. They need to memorize all the dances, they need to memorize all the songs, and they have to memorize all the acting and the blocking. And so musicals take a little bit longer. Usually a musical will rehearse for anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks. It just depends, again. In the professional world, you might put together a musical in about 5 weeks. If it was a larger musical, you could still do it in 3 if it was a smaller size musical. And then also classical pieces take longer too. So something like Shakespeare, anything in the classical canon, the Greek works and all of that, those usually we take a little bit more time with them just because the text is so much more complex and richer, and it takes more time for people to get their heads around it. And usually it's a period piece. So there might be things that we have to do in terms of training actors how to walk in a dress or a corset, or all these other elements that get played into there. And so again, with a classical piece, it looks more like a musical. We usually do somewhere between 6 and 10 weeks of rehearsal with a classical piece. So it just depends. But those are some good averages to look at. What we normally say is, at least here on campus, my little rule of thumb is that I need to have 18 to 20 hours of rehearsal every week with my actors if I have a 5 to 6 week rehearsal period in order to be ready by the end, yeah? So again, we're just sectioning that out so that we can get all the pieces together and get everybody ready for the performance by the end point. We aren't going to take a break quite yet, but I do, because we're coming up on it in about 4 minutes at 12:50. We are going to take a 10-minute break. There'll be some weeks where we don't take breaks, and that might just be because maybe we're not going to be here the full 2 hours and I have a lot to get through. I promise I'll always tell you if we are, but today we're probably going to go the full 2 hours, so I'd like for myself to have a break and for you to have a break so you can get up and go to the restroom or get a drink or whatever you need to do, but we won't take it quite yet. I just want you to be thinking about it as we're heading towards that. All right, so we are going to, in a moment as well, start talking about the course itself. We're going to take a look on Blackboard when we come back from the break, and we're going to be looking at what are all the things in Blackboard. This is an online course, so even though we do have this broadcast every week, all of your work is online. So I do want you to be familiar with Blackboard. There's a ton of stuff on there. If you haven't poked around, we're going to take some time to look around, see where everything is, point you to the most important things. We're going to talk about the syllabus. We're not going to go through it extensively because you'll see the assignments is really where you want to have your head for this semester. We already have talked about the book, but we're going to go through all these different things so that by the end of today, you're hopefully going to have a really good feeling for what this course, like how to get a good grade in the course, where to go every week, what your assignments are, and how to keep yourself organized. Because one of the things about this course, guys, that you really, I can't stress this enough. I often think online courses are harder than in-person courses because I'm not sitting there with you. So I have to have some kind of measure to make sure that you're paying attention, that you're doing the work, that you're getting the information. I can't just ask you a question and have you guys raise your hands and go, okay, it looks like everyone in the class understands, right? So there's so much stuff online that you need to be aware of. Because of that, it's so important that you keep up with the work in this class. If you get a little bit behind, it becomes a very big problem really quickly, right? The work just starts accumulating and you may find that you can never catch up. So I really want to emphasize to you that the first step to keeping up with the work is figuring out what's online, where it is, and when it's due. So that you get yourself on a schedule of knowing when to complete it in a timely fashion so that you really just don't ever get behind in the course. Because when you do, like I said, it can become a problem. And I've seen it happen to students, and then it's like they can't ever really catch up, and then you end up not doing so as well as you'd like to. So the one thing I will say before we go to break is that, and when we come back, we'll look at this more carefully, but everything in this class is due on Sunday at midnight. Every single thing. If you can just get that one thing in your brain, you'll already be doing really well, right? So everything in the class is due on Sunday. The discussion boards are due on Sunday. The quizzes are due on Sunday. If there's papers, they're due on Sunday. The only things that aren't is the midterm and the final. The reason for that is that they're open for an entire week. Okay? So you can take them, when the midterm opens, it'll be open for an entire week. You have the whole week to take it. When the final opens, it's open for an entire week. You have the whole week to take it. But other than that, everything is due on Sunday, every Sunday. And there is not one Sunday between now and when we finish this course where there won't be something that's due. So if you can just get in your head that that's how you need to be thinking about the course, is getting stuff in on Sunday, then you're going to be doing really, really well. All right, it is 12:50 now. We're going to take a quick break, 10 minutes. When we come back, we're going to start looking at the syllabus and the course and all of that good stuff. And so I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.
You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
I feel like before I was just about myself. I'm not gonna get distracted by anything or anybody. I'm just here on a mission, that's what I thought. But I started to realize that I don't want to be just a student. I want to be like a motivation to somebody.
I love my job. I wanted to be able to have a place, like a laboratory on campus, that people could actually get hands-on into making a difference. The CSUDH Urban Farm is one part of the operation that we're building here. We have energy systems, we have food systems, we have transportation systems, and we're trying to make them more sustainable.
I started to volunteer a lot to just let myself get exposed to different things that I wasn't used to get out of that comfort zone.
One of the reasons I teach here is because my own artwork has a really strong tie to the LA community. There's some really amazing artists who live and work in South Los Angeles. They want to work with our students, and when they actually meet these artists, it's like very transformative. They start to realize that their time here at CSUDH isn't about finding something new to make art about. It's actually about how to shape and engage the community with the things that are already important to them.
I want to become an orthopedic surgeon, and right now I have an internship at Kaiser, and that's one of the things I want to do in the outside world, is just to help the community. I'm not only changing my life, but I'm also changing other people's lives.
That is that thing of like, I want to get up and work hard to change things for the future, to make things better. I want to interact with my community. How does this small system that we're building out here relate to the larger regional system? Because ultimately that has to happen for the entire city, the entire country, the entire world.
My name is Devin.
My name is Johnny.
My name is Jenny, and I'm a Toro. I'm a first-generation student, and I never really thought that what I was doing was important. Without the help of everybody that's mentored me so far, I don't feel like I would have gotten as far as I have.
For me, that's the best thing about being here. Seeing them achieve things that they never thought they could.
It was a long road to get my bachelor's degree. I took a very untraditional path. I was working, supporting myself. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I made it a point to introduce myself to all of my professors while I was here.
Somebody who's already at this place where you want to be is recognizing something within you. And it gives you the permission to believe in yourself.
Our research focuses on the intersection between psychology, technology, and media, how people's media consumption can affect them. I think it's remarkable that CSUDH has been represented on 60 Minutes, on national media. To me, that points to the amazing cutting-edge research that we're doing.
If it wasn't for professors like Dr. Shabir, who had honestly bigger dreams for me than I have for myself, I wouldn't have had one of the most rewarding experiences, not only at CSUDH, but also in my life. The year after I graduated, I got recruited to Facebook, and I thought nobody's ever gonna ask me about the degree. That was the first question they asked.
Ideas can really blossom here. For instance, joining a lab or having an idea for some program that you want to start. We really allow those kinds of ideas to grow.
The feeling I had when I was here as a student was that I could do anything. How can I share that experience that I had here with all the other students now?
Mentorship in that sense is incredibly important because I started to believe in my own ability, and that definitely helped me, I suppose, become the person that I really am. For me, success is reaching the point where I can become help to other people, and now I'm heading off to my PhD.
My name is Bree.
My name is Nancy.
My name is Amaranta, and I'm a Toro.
Good afternoon, Toro Nation! Don't waste time with negativity. Instead, surround yourself with people who share the same goals as you. If you believe it, you can do it.
You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Hello, welcome back to Theater 100. Hope you had a nice little break there. And we're going to continue on by looking at the rest of the course. We're going to look online at Blackboard a little bit and explore there and be talking about what the course requirements are, so that hopefully you guys feel like you understand what you're going to be doing for this semester. As we are going through this, if you are watching live or online, I would encourage you that if you have any questions, this would be a great time for you to ask them, type them in case there might be somebody else who has your question. You can give us a call at 310-928-7330, or you can type in a question at askdhtvlive@gmail.com. Okay, so at any time, I promise to get to all of them today, because I think those questions are really important, and we want to make sure you understand and feel comfortable about the course. If you're watching this later, if you're watching this as an archive version and you do have a question, feel free to email me any of your questions, and I'll try to get to them in a timely manner. And sometimes if I don't, here's a little trick too, guys, for me. Sometimes if I get lots and lots of emails about the same thing, right, same question, then I will take the time to answer that question or questions online in my next broadcast. So unless it's something that's time sensitive. So just be aware of that. Sometimes if you send me an email and there's a question about something and you don't hear back from me, then you might want to go ahead and watch the broadcast, because it may have been that you and 10 other people asked that same question, and rather than sending 10 separate emails to answer that question, I went online and just answered the question for everybody all at once, okay? So again, if it's time sensitive, then usually I will email you back, but if it's something like that, and it does happen sometimes, then I try to do it online so that we're getting everybody all at once. Okay, so online you have several different things that you need to look at. One of the things you need to look at in the tabs is you need to look at the syllabus. This is something where you're going to just want to scroll down. I want you to just have an overview of what the entire course is about. It also gives you an idea of like what are the topics we're going to be covering, and what things are due when's spring break, and all that good stuff, right? I think as long as you look at that at least once in the next couple weeks, that's a good plan. So pop into your Blackboard at some point in the next week or two just to get familiar with the tabs and where everything is, and then take an opportunity to look at the syllabus. It's a nice bird's eye view of what the entire course is going to be about. In terms of the syllabus though, this is a course where you will be able to look at that syllabus once, maybe twice, and then you really don't need to look at it again. And the reason why is because everything else is in the assignments tab, okay? So actually what I'd like to do is I'd like to pop over, we're gonna get Blackboard in full screen here so that you can see the assignments tab. Okay, so if you can see my arrow here, I know that the screen, you can't see everything, but if you were to click on assignments, which is right here, you can see the end of it, it's gonna bring you to this page. And what you see in this are all of the folders for every single week of class, right? In fact, you can see, we're in mine, so you're gonna see folders that you won't see, but all the way to week 17, right? Every single week, you need to click onto the folder for the week. So for this week, you need to click on week 1. And when you click on that, it's going to take you into this sort of a page, and in here, there are clear instructions for what you need to do this week and what assignments are due. So here it says, read the lecture on theater and life posted in course materials under lectures. Visit each button on the Theater 100 panel. Assignments, syllabus, faculty information, course materials, assignments, websites, create homepage, all of the blah, 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 on and on, right? And make sure, so I'm just asking you to take a look around the website, right? Let's take a look around our Blackboard. Now here's an assignment that's due. Go to the discussion board and tell us about yourself and your experience with film, television, and theater, or here's the other option, discuss the course and your expectations, right? And remember, right before the break, I told you everything is due Sunday. This is due this Sunday, January 26th at midnight. And it's worth extra points than all the other discussion boards, because we really want to encourage you to do this one so that you get a good habit going right at the beginning of the semester. This one is worth 30 points. They're usually worth 22 points, I believe, but this one is worth more. I just want to encourage you to do it so that you can, get, again, find where the discussion board is, get in the habit, figure out how to do it, right? Then you're going to, hopefully you're doing this, you're going to watch the broadcast today for important information about the course content and grading. So I'm going to now click back to the main thing because I want to show you next week as well. So that's this week. This week is a little different just because it's our first week together, and so I have less things for you to do than you normally would. So let's click into next week. Next week you can see that we're talking about the audience, right? Now I also want to clarify something else for you. The date that you see here is the date of the broadcast. January 31st is the date of, I think, of our next broadcast, right? Maybe that's wrong. It might need to be January 30th. I might have messed that up, sorry. But no, here it is, January 26th. Yeah, so that's wrong. Sorry about that. I'll have to fix that. But here you'll see, if you read through this, here are all the things you need to do this week. So take the textbook quiz by clicking on the hyperlink below. There it is, right there. There's the quiz. Let's see, I'll draw your attention to it. If you click on this underlined thing that says quiz the audience, it's going to open the quiz for you, okay? So you need to take that quiz by Sunday at midnight. This is for next week, not this week, right? And then you're going to watch the broadcast on Thursday like you normally would. Call in if you want to get extra credit. Repeat this for every week. And then you're going to go on the discussion board and you're going to post a new thread and you're going to do something that you're not going to do this week, which is you're going to reply to somebody else's post. It's actually 22 participation points by Sunday, right? You're also going to repeat that for every week of class. Now, every week, we can go ahead and go back to my face now. Every week, there is not necessarily a quiz. There are some weeks where there are no quizzes. There are some weeks where instead of a quiz, I have you turn in a paper assignment, right? But every single week, except for spring break and the week of final exams, there is a discussion board that's due every single week. So even if there's nothing else that you have to do that week except for watch the broadcast, there is a discussion board. And those discussion boards, as I said, that point there is wrong. I have to correct it. Those discussion boards are worth 22 points each. And you don't get the full 22 points if you don't do both parts. Now, so this week, all you have to do is what is in the instructions, which is just post something either about your own experiences with television, theater, and film, why maybe you decided to take this course, maybe you have been in a lot of plays, or maybe you want to work in film one day, or whatever, or maybe you're just a film buff, right? Or you could also just tell us what you think of the course so far, what you hope to learn, what your expectations are for the course, okay? So either of those things, you're going to type about a paragraph, about 100 words, right? As long as you do that, you're going to get 30 points this week just for doing that. You don't even have to reply to anybody else, right? And there's no quiz this week. I just want you to make yourself familiar with Blackboard, and I want you to watch the broadcast and then do your discussion board. So next week, we're going to get right into the thick of things, right? Next week, you need to watch the broadcast. You need to hopefully do the reading if you have the book. You're going to take a quiz on the audience, right? That's what we're going to be talking about next week. And that's due on Sunday, because everything is due on Sunday at midnight. And you're going to do the discussion board, which is now going to ask you to respond. And we're going to go into the discussion board in a second, so you'll see what that's like too. Respond to whatever question I have in there for the week or the reading. And then you're also going to reply to another student in class, right? So the 22 points are for creating your own thread, writing your own discussion board comment, and then responding to a peer's comment. If you don't do both of those things, you don't get the entire points, okay? So I'll tell you right now, just between you and I, the bulk of the points are for writing your own discussion, okay? So posting your own thread, responding to whatever it is, the reading for the week, whatever we were talking about, and writing something about that cohesively. The reply is worth less. It's worth less of those 22 points. But if you don't do it, you're not going to get the full 22 points. So just so you know, if for some reason you're in a hurry or whatever, you almost forgot to do it and you don't have time to do both, at least do the response, right? At least do the first part, comment, and then if you don't have time to find someone else that you'd like to reply to, because that can be a little bit, sometimes you scroll, you want to find one that you really like and respond to it. But if you don't have time for that, that's the one to leave out if you have to choose. But better to do both and get all the points, right? So, and then you do that every week. Now, like I said, there's not a quiz every week. Sometimes there's a paper. Sometimes there's I think there might even be a week where there's no quiz and no paper. But as long as you know where that assignments tab is and you go into it, you know what week we're in, you're going to really keep yourself on track, right? And as long as you remember everything's due on Sunday, then you'll hopefully never miss an assignment deadline or a discussion board or any of those things, right? So all you have to do to know what's happening in class is on Mondays, I would suggest, or even on Sunday when you're turning in all your things, go into the assignments, click on the week that we're in, look at what's due for the week, and then just make sure that you make time to do those things, okay? So the assignments page is the key. Know where the assignments page is, stay up with the assignments, be aware of what's due, and make sure it gets in on Sunday by midnight, right? We already talked about the book. I'm going to mention it again. You do have a book required for this course. It's called The Theater Experience by Edwin Wilson. I encourage you to buy the 11th edition, but you may buy any edition from the 11th all the way up to the newest edition. If you do that, you want to make sure that you're doing the correct reading every week by simply discarding the chapter numbers and only looking at the topic. So next week we're talking about the audience. In whatever edition you're looking at of the Edwin Wilson book, you want to read the chapter. I think there's only one chapter, might be two, that says the audience. Okay? And then you'll be fine. And as long as you watch the broadcast and do that, you should be able to get a really great score on that quiz. Okay? One thing about the quizzes. When there are quizzes, and there are a number of them in this class, I believe 9 this semester. We'll have to look. But there are quite a few of them, and they're worth a significant part of your grade. If you start missing a bunch of them, that's going to be a real problem. They're due when they say they're due, right? So on that Sunday at midnight, what's going to happen is that in that assignments folder that you went into, all the other stuff in the assignments folder is going to be there. But once the due date passes, once that Sunday comes and goes and midnight, that quiz is going to disappear. So if you've missed it, you can't just go back into the old folders and start taking your quizzes that you missed, right? They're just going to disappear. If you have a really good reason why you didn't take the quiz, you got really sick, something happened, some extenuating circumstance, you can email me and we will negotiate whether or not I'm going to reopen that quiz for you and allow you to take it and then take it and have some points taken off for being late. But that's not a guarantee. So really, it's important for you to try to take those quizzes. Remember that you have all week to take them. You don't have to take them on Sunday. That's just the last time that you can do it, right? And further to that point, the quizzes are set up so that you can take them as many times as you want. Unlimited amount of tries, right? But whatever the last one is that you take, that's the grade that's going to go into the grade book, right? So it doesn't take your highest score. So let's say you took it 10 times, and one time you got a perfect score, but for some reason you decided you wanted to take it 2 more times and you didn't get a perfect score on the last one. Whatever goes into the grade book is the last attempt, right? So whatever the last grade was that you got, that's the one that's going to go into the grade book on Sunday at midnight, right? But the idea is you can go ahead and take it early if you want, and then if you don't like the score you got on Tuesday, you can try and take it again on Friday, and hopefully you get a better score, and then you can just leave that one in there and that will be the one that's submitted. But again, you have unlimited tries. They're not timed. But whatever the last score is that you get, that's the one that's going to go into the grade book. And they all close at Sunday at midnight. So please take them before then. Right? All right. The course, this course meets the GE requirements for fine and performing arts. For Dominguez Hill students, it covers one of the lower division humanities area electives. And we focus on the artistic process across these three mediums of television, film, and theater. Obviously, you don't want to cheat in this class. 1 second. You don't want to plagiarize. Okay? So I can't be sitting with you there. These quizzes are not on Respondus, meaning your browser is not locked down while you're taking the quiz. And I obviously can't keep you from having your book open or your notes available to you. In fact, I expect that you will do that. So while you're taking the quizzes, you can use your notes, you can use your book. In fact, in your midterm and your final exam, you can do the same thing. What you can't do is when you write a paper for my class, you cannot plagiarize. Everything is turned in through Turnitin. I promise you, Turnitin will catch you. Even if you think you're being super sneaky, you changed one word inside of the copy and paste that you did, it's still going to show me. And if you've got a lot of things that have been plagiarized that have not been properly cited, they're not in quotation marks, there's not a citation for where you got it, you're claiming those words as your own, that's plagiarism. It's going to show that to me once we get past a certain percentage that seems unacceptable to me. It's usually somewhere around 10-15% of your paper is obviously from somewhere else. Then that's when I give you a 0 on the assignment. I send you an email that says this paper was plagiarized, and you have one of two options. You can either redo the paper and it will be late, so you're going to get points off the top, or you can just take the 0, okay? If that happens more than once, then that's a much stronger conversation that we have. The campus policy is that I can actually fail you in the course just for plagiarizing one time, right? And I can report you to the College of Arts and Humanities, and then they can decide whether or not you should be put on academic probation. So it's a very serious thing to plagiarize. I don't usually do that. I usually give you the opportunity to correct your mistake, and most people take that opportunity and wise up and don't do it again. But I'm just telling you, if you think you're smarter than Turnitin, you're not. And we're going to catch you, and it's really just not worth it. It's so much better, guys, for you just to write a terrible paper and not get a very good grade than it is for you to plagiarize and get caught and then go through the hassle of this whole thing that we have to do when that happens, okay? So just write the papers and do the work that you're supposed to do. You know, you're not really cheating me, you're cheating yourself when you don't do the work as assigned, and it is not something that benefits you in the end, okay? So everything goes through Turnitin, and so that's a big incentive for you to just do the work yourself, and then everybody will have a good semester, okay? All right. Participation, your participation is really recorded through your discussion board. That's how we keep track of your participation. And then you have an opportunity in the live broadcast to participate and get extra credit as well. So your participation points are your discussion board points, basically. That's how we're asking you to participate in the course. So what I'd like to do now is if we can go to a full screen here, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the discussion board so that we can take a look at that. So if you can see here, I've clicked on the thing here that says discussion board. It brings me to this here. Now, this view is maybe a little different than what you have, but what I can see here already, which makes me very, very happy, is that I see that 21 of you have already logged into the discussion board and done this discussion board for this week early. That makes me super happy. That's a really good sign. And so you can see the instructions here are here for you. And so even if you didn't go into that assignments folder, for the first couple weeks, I try to do a little bit of hand-holding and make it really clear what what you need to write about in the discussion board here, so it's right in front of your face as you're doing it. You'll see as we get a little further along, right, look at, okay, first 3 weeks, that disappears, right? So now in week 4, now I ask you to just remember what you're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do is this. Respond with a single paragraph of at least 3 sentences that reveals your analysis and evaluation of your response, and it should be regarding tragedy and comedy, your reading for the week. The reason for the discussion board is to give you a chance to reflect upon the readings and our chapters and discussions from the broadcast classes. In other words, you need to write a paragraph, not just a sentence. It's not the same as a chat line, so if you want the points, you need to think about it. Remember, you need one new thread and one reply to another student's thread to get both participation points for the discussion board. So to get the full 22 points, you have to do both, right? It doesn't mean that if you only do one, you're not going to get any points, but it does mean that you're not going to get all of the points. So you can see from week 4 on, I stop reminding you of that. I'm hoping that by week 4, you're going to remember that each week you're just supposed to talk about the reading and or the broadcast, write a paragraph with complete sentences, and then reply to somebody else's comments or ideas, right? If it's not clear, because, for instance, let's go down to week 9. So week 9, I have included something here. Why is that? Because in your book, there is no chapter on television, right? So you can't respond to the reading. So this is really week 9 where we're talking about television. This is about you responding to this question and or the broadcast for the week. So I write here what exactly I want you to do. The same for week 10 and the same for week 12. Because again, even though you do have a chapter in your book about musicals, we're looking at it from a slightly different perspective. You could talk about the reading if you wanted to in this week as well. But 12 is really different from what the book is presenting. And so you'll see that I give you a prompt here to respond to. So in the weeks where there is something really specific or I want you to respond, I've left it here for you so that it's really clear what you're supposed to do. You can see week 11 is spring break. There's no discussion board that week. There's also no discussion board at the very end, which is, okay, we're not seeing here. But anyways, there is no, you won't see this in yours. Week 17 doesn't appear for you. It ends with week 17. And week 17 is finals week, and there is no discussion board due the week of finals, okay? So I'm so encouraged that so many of you have already logged in here and figured out how to do this. And I also see that there's 3 questions in here. I'll go ahead and look at those after class today and respond to them. So this is your work every week. You're going to go in. I'm not going to open these online because I don't want to expose everybody's things right now. But if I were to click on this, actually, if I were to click on this here, it would then take me to the discussion board. And what that looks like is kind of like a chat board like you'd find on Reddit or some of these other places where you can look through what people have written and you can see the replies, and you can also choose to reply and or add a new thread, right? So I think it's pretty straightforward, but this is a really important component of what you have to do every week. And even on weeks where we don't have a quiz or we have an assignment due, there's still a discussion board. So again, scrolling down, we see there's one for week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You get a break during spring break, and then we continue out through the rest of the semester, one for every single week, leading all the way to the very end, our last week together, where we'll be talking about directing. All right, so we can go back to my face. Thank you. All right, so those are the 2 really big components, guys. The assignments tab and keeping up with those assignments and looking in there every week and being clear about what to do, right? And the discussion board and keeping up with that and doing that every week. And then just to reiterate, and I will keep saying it for the next couple weeks, everything is due on Sunday. Does that mean that you have to turn it in on Sunday? No, it just means that that's the last time you could turn it in. As you can see, lots of people have already gone on and done their discussion board. You could do your discussion board later today. You could do it Friday. You could do it Saturday. You could do it anytime on Sunday before midnight. But once Sunday midnight happens, week 1 is going to disappear. You won't be able to do it anymore, right? And I do not reopen discussion boards. I might reopen a test for you. I might let you take turn in a paper late, but I do not reopen discussion boards. So if you haven't done your discussion board, that's it. Those 22 points are gone. They have gone into the great unknown. You're not ever going to get them back. So it's really important that you keep up with that and you do it. And that if you don't, or there's a week where you can't do it, that maybe you try to then watch the live broadcast while we're here live so that you can make up those points with answering an extra credit question, right? Because the points are almost similar. It's 20 points if you call in or type in extra credit, and the discussion board is 22 points. So those are kind of, the ways that you can try to balance out the equation if you have to miss a discussion board. And then I'll just reiterate that if you do have to not fully complete the assignment, the part to do is the response to the reading or the broadcast. If you have to not do one part of it, then just forget about the reply because it's worth less points. I usually make that worth about 5 points, right? So really the bulk of the points is in you writing the paragraph and responding in a complete way. If you end up not doing a reply, it's not going to ding you as hard as if you don't do the response, right? So do the response if you have to choose between the two. All right. So we've already talked about why you should watch the broadcast, that there's going to be things that I talk about in the broadcast that are going to relate to your tests at the end. And usually those terms, in fact, I don't want to say usually, all the time, if there's a term that I mention in class, in the broadcast, that's going to be on a test, it is in caps and it's underlined on the lower thirds. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a term come up that's all in caps and is underlined. That means that at home, you need to write that term down and write whatever definition I give for you of that term, because that is going to end up on a test at some point, right? It might end up on a quiz, it might end up on a final exam or a midterm, but it's got a really high probability, like 90% probability of ending up on one of those things, so you want to know what it is. And then I want to remind you that those don't appear anywhere else. So if you're doing the reading every week, that's great. You're still going to be able to get a great grade on your quizzes, but there might be one question that you miss, and it's because that question was related to the broadcast and something that was said in the broadcast. So that's a really important reason. And then, of course, the second important reason to watch live would be that if you're watching it live, then you get the opportunity to type in and get some extra credit and maybe give yourself a cushion if you don't do as well on an assignment or there's a discussion board you need to miss one week. So those are all good reasons to do that. There are several writing assignments that we have in the class. There are 2 reviews that you're going to do, one of a film, one of a live theater performance that I'm going to ask you to see during the course of the semester, and then one character analysis based on Raisin in the Sun. And that brings me to the other book you need. So you absolutely need the textbook, and then you also need to buy a copy of a play. It's in your syllabus, right? When you pull up the syllabus, you'll see that it's there. But if you're watching right now or you're watching later, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. So the name of the play is A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. One second. We're going to watch portions of the film version in class, and we're going to talk about it. But we're not going to read the play in class. We would not have time. It would be so boring for you to tune in to watch me reading this play, right? So you have to read it on your own. And even if you watch the broadcast, you're still going to need to read it on your own. Plays are very short. They're easy to read. They're not like reading a textbook or reading a novel or something like that. But you do need to purchase the play. You're going to be able to get this play pretty much anywhere. Go online, type in A Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine Hansberry, and the play is going to pop up, and you can find it very cheaply, somewhere between $9 and $10, right? So you need to buy it. I think about buying it now in the next couple weeks. It's not until, I think, week 6 or 7. Let me look real quick for you just so you have an idea. Week 5. Yeah, so start thinking about it now, right? Because if you order it from Amazon, it's going to take a week sometimes to get here. So order it now so that you can have some time to, you have it, you have some time to read it at your leisure, right? But we are going to be looking at that, and you do need to buy that play. Please make sure that it is A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. There are not a bunch of plays named that, but just in case, there's a Lawrence Ferlinghetti poem that has that line in it, and it's not the poem, right? It is the play A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. So again, if you're confused, go into the syllabus. In the required text, you see the textbook as well as the play. And just make sure you copy that down, and then you can put it in and buy it. I've already talked about the discussion boards and how those work. That's the other writing thing that you have, the other writing component that you have during the course of the semester. There are quizzes that you will be taking. All of those quizzes are linked from the assignments page. That's the only place you'll be able to find them. And there are several of them. We're not going to look at my screen, but I want to pull up really quickly. Real quick, just so I have a number for you. One sec. I think there are like 7 or 8, maybe 9, right, quizzes in the class. But it's not really important for you to know, because every week when you log into that assignments page, the quiz will be there, right? It's not going to be like you wondering whether or not you have a quiz this week. You just log into the assignments page, you'll clearly see it there. And again, you have all week to take the quiz. You don't have to wait until Sunday. But, I suggest if you're watching the broadcast on Thursday or thereabouts, Friday maybe, try to take the quiz, on Saturday or Sunday in the morning. That way, if you want to take it a few times to get a better score, you leave yourself some time to take it, right? But you're more than welcome to take it whenever you want, right? So you can take the quizzes whenever you want, just that they close on Sunday at midnight. And then in order for those, if you miss it, you're going to have to email me, tell me why you missed it, and then it's up to me to decide whether or not I think that was a legitimate reason for you to miss it. I don't always just reopen them. It is a big, I don't want to say a hassle, but it does require some work on my part to reopen it and then to coordinate with you when you're going to take it again so that I can schedule it for it to close, because I just don't like to leave them open. Otherwise, you guys will just go take them whenever you want, and then the deadlines don't mean anything, right? So just really, guys, try to take them by the deadline every week. That way we don't get into these strange situations where I have to keep reopening quizzes for you over and over again, right? The quizzes are primarily based on the reading, but they always have some elements that are taken from the broadcast. So you really have to do those two things in conjunction with each other. There are a few of them that are based solely on the broadcast because there is no chapter in your book about them. I just went through some of the examples. Television is one. Musicals is one. That's a 2-part lecture I do. Angels in America is another one. So those 4, musicals, the musicals don't have a quiz, and actually television I don't think it does either. So you don't have to worry about those, but the discussion boards are different. But Angels in America does have a quiz, and that will be one where when you look in your assignments page, it becomes very clear what you have to do in order to do well on the quiz, right? So when that's all the way at the end of the semester, guys. So when we get there, it'll be clear to you, right? All right, you also have a midterm and a final exam that you'll be doing. These are 2 multiple choice timed exams. They're different in one really important way. You don't get to take them as many times as you want. You only have one opportunity to take the quiz, yeah? So once you take it and submit it, that's it. Whatever you got, right? And the other difference is that they are timed. So with the midterm, you get 75 minutes to take it. That's an hour and 15 minutes. That's a regular class period, just like you would if you came into my class and sat down to take a midterm. So you get an hour and 15 minutes. And the final is what you would be allocated for an actual final if you came into class. You get 120 minutes, which is 2 hours. I can tell you right now, it will not take you that long to take those tests. It maybe would if you didn't study at all, right? But if you've kept up with the work and you've done the readings and you do a little bit of studying before, you should do fine. You should be able to take the quiz in a very timely manner. Not the quiz, I'm sorry, the midterm and the final. They're worth a chunk of points, so you do need to take them, right? And it would be nice for you to do well on them, and if you don't, it's going to be problematic for you in terms of getting a good grade. But you'll see where they are. They're obviously long time away from now. And when you get there, I think, like I said, if you've kept up with the reading and you've kept up with watching the broadcast, when you get to that point, I think you're going to feel really well prepared. All right. I already talked about the assignments page. We took a good look at it. And that is where you need to go in terms of looking at what our weekly schedule is and what we're going to be doing and what's required of you. But just again, remember everything, I told you, I'm going to keep saying this, everything is due Sunday at midnight, right? It's the last chance for you to do it. As long as you remember that, then I think you're going to be good in terms of making sure things get in on time, Okay? So, we have about 30 minutes, a little less, left of class. I want to do a little bit of an introduction to film. We're going to take some time. We're going to have to move pretty quickly because we don't have a ton of time left. But I do want to talk a little bit about film today, and I want to look at some important aspects of film. So films are probably the thing that you're most familiar with. They're something that you've probably been watching since you were a little kid. And they are a really unique form. Like I said, one of the things that make them so unique is just how highly curated they are, just how selectively put together they are. And yet, when we watch them, we get a real sense of realism, right? There's a sense of flow and like that it just feels like, this was happening in real life and this is exactly the way it happened. Even though most of the time when we're watching something, even a scene just between two actors and the going back and forth between those two actors, some of the takes you might be seeing, like let's say you're watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and it's Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. You might see Leo in one take, and that take that you just saw was from take 7. And then we flip back to Brad, and his take, the one you're seeing, is actually from take 3, right? So these two things didn't even happen at the same time, right? And yet when we watch it, there's a sense of it just happening in the moment and the flow, and it's going back and forth, and it's this wonderful dance that imitates realism in this really lovely way. But it's actually, I think, a really fun thing to realize is that that's not at all the way that it happened, right? And the way that film is made is so different from the way that when we sit down to watch a film, the way we receive it is completely different. And that's really what makes it this really wonderful art form. It's that we have directors and editors and all of these people who work together to create this lovely piece that feels like it happened and it's happening right in front of us in this way that's very cohesive and has continuity. And yet the way that it was actually created was incredibly disjointed and separate, and things happened sometimes months apart from each other, right? In totally different locations, and the script was filmed out of order, right? But when we watch it, we get to experience it with this lovely sense of continuity and realism. So when we're analyzing films, what are the things that we want to think about? Well, one of the things we want to think about when we're watching films and analyzing them is how the camera helps to tell the story, right? So one of the ways that we can start thinking about how the camera is used, because that's one of the really unique things that's really different from film to theater, right? Film and television have cameras. Theater has no cameras. You have your eyes. Those are the cameras, right? So when we're thinking about looking at film and analyzing how the camera helps to tell the story, we then need to become familiar with how the camera is used to tell that story, and what are the things that the camera can do to help to tell the story, right? So we're going to take a look at a couple things. The first thing I want us to understand is the idea of a shot. Right, we're going to use that word a lot in talking about film. So what is a shot? Well, a shot is a single, uninterrupted running of the camera. You know what this is because on your phone, you have the ability to record video, right? When you press the big red button and you start recording video, that's the beginning of a shot. You turn it on, right? And now the camera's running, now it's recording. Recording. When you're done recording, you press the red button again, and then that shot is done, right? And that's the end of that shot. So a shot is just one single continuous running of the camera from the time we turn it on to the time we turn it off. Now, when we're making a film, we have lots and lots of shots, hundreds of shots, sometimes thousands of shots that we do, right? We turn the camera on, we turn the camera off. That's one shot. We turn the camera on, we turn the camera off. That's another shot, right? So we'll have many of those, and then eventually when we have as many as we think we need, then we string them together in a way that tells a cohesive narrative. There are different kinds of shots that we can take with our camera. And one of the main things that creates that is the distance of the camera from the subject. So here are 3 at the bottom of your screen here, right? And we're going to talk about these 3. The establishing shot, the medium shot, and the close-up. So this is the bread and butter. These are the 3 main types of shots that we use in film to help to tell the story. And they're all dictated by the distance of the subject to the camera, or the perceived distance at least, right? So I also want to know that these are the first underlying graphics, which means that they might appear on an exam somewhere. So you want to make sure that you'll copy them down. And remember that they're not going to appear anywhere else. They're not in your book. They're not anywhere on Blackboard. If you don't copy these 3 down right now, as I go through to define them, you'll want to write the definitions next to them, and then these will be the only places that you have that definition for reference to later. Okay? So, what are these 3 shots and what do they do? Well, the first one is the establishing shot, and that is a shot that is a funny one to me because it has so many different names, right? We're going to call it the establishing shot, but it can also be called a long shot, a wide shot, right? One second. Sometimes called a master shot, yeah? So it has lots of different names, but they all basically mean the same thing. What the establishing shot does is it establishes location, and it should include, like in the picture behind me. Actually, can we go to a full screen of this? Because this is a good example. You can take this. Can we go to a full screen? There we go. This is an establishing shot from Little Miss Sunshine. And what we see here is that we see almost a lot of the background, right? We see a lot of the location. We see all of the actors that are important, right? Now, in a moment, like not in this moment here, but if we were watching this scene, I'm familiar with this scene, what we're going to go to is not this shot, but a series of medium shots and close-ups where we're going to see the actors talking to each other. So maybe we go from Steve Carell to one of the other actors, and we see Steve in a close-up, and we see the other actor in a close-up, and we're switching between those 2 close-ups, right? But why is this shot important? Well, it's important because it happens at the beginning of the scene. And as an audience watching this, I need to know a couple things about this scene before we go into the nitty-gritty of it. I need to know where we are, and I need to know who are all the important people that are in this scene that are going to be talking, right? So that even when I don't see them, I still know they're there, right? And so that's what the establishing shot helps to do. Okay, we can come back to me now. So, the other thing that an establishing shot does, which is sometimes why it's called an establishing shot, is that it establishes just the location. So sometimes in sitcoms, although they don't really do this anymore, there's a good example right here. Sometimes in sitcoms, what we'll see is because some of the, again, television has changed a lot, so this is not really something we do very much anymore. But in sitcoms, it's really standard for us to, first of all, be shooting on a studio set all the time. Meaning, like, if you guys watch Friends, one of the things that they'll do is they're always in their apartment or they're in the coffee shop, right? Those are like the main 2 locations that we see. So one of the things that they'll do is they'll show the outside of the apartment building before we go into the apartment building, so that the audience gets a sense of where we are and this sense of realism, right? This isn't just a set somewhere on a studio, on a sound lot somewhere. This is a place that really exists in time and space. You could go there, right? It's a real New York apartment. The fact is that set lived on a sound lot somewhere and was constructed and was never in a real apartment in New York, right? But in order to create that reality for us, they show us this establishing shot. It does 2 things. It helps us to place ourselves, where are we? And secondly, it helps us establish the realism. So a lot of times they'll do that. In films, we do that too in terms of, like, sometimes you'll see a big shot of the city, right? Like, oh, we're in New York. So we start off with this lovely pan of the Empire State Building and all of the buildings lit up at night. And look, we're in New York. And then we go to a location. And the great thing that we do in film is that you might not be in New York at all. You might be on a back lot somewhere. You might be in Los Angeles, right? But because we showed you New York City in this establishing shot, now you think that we're in New York, right? So the establishing shots are about establishing the location. They're about showing us where we are and showing us all of the important actors that are in that shot. The reason why they're also called sometimes a wide shot is because that's how they're filmed. They're filmed at a distance from the actors because there's so much that needs to come into the frame. We have to physically be at a certain distance from the actors to get all of that in the frame. And we usually want the lens open, right? We want the aperture open as far as it can to capture as much of that as we can, right? So in other words, the widest shot possible, the most of that picture that we can get. All right, the next shot is the medium shot. And the medium shot focuses on characters, but in their environment. So here now we're moving closer, right? We don't need to see everybody who's in this scene. We just need to see the one or two people that are important in this scene. And these shots are usually, like you can see here behind me, from the waist up, right? And we can still see some of the background. We see where the actor is. They're located in space, right? This is, I'm not sure what this is from, but this, we can see the background, and it looks like he's in a church of some sort. And we see a lot of the actor, and we get a sense for where they are and who they are, right? So the medium shot is something where we use, sometimes there might be two people in a medium shot as well, right? And oftentimes we call that a twofer, right? Or a two shot. So that might be a medium shot of two people from their waist up, and we can see them together having some sort of relationship or relating to each other, but we also still see some of the background as well, right? Then we have the close-up, and this is where the camera draws in to a very tight focus, just usually on the face or from the shoulders up of the actor. Now this is a very, very tight close-up from a very famous film, The Shining, from a very famous moment in a film called The Shining. And this is, we use, honestly guys, what the common phrase is that film is, close-ups are the bread and butter of film, right? Film is all about the close-up because that is where it has its advantage, right? In theater, you can't walk up to actors and be as close as we are to Jack Nicholson's face in this shot. In fact, you're never going to be that close to Jack Nicholson's face in real life. In fact, you're never going to be that close to most people that you meet in your life. You're never going to be this far away from them, right? But in film, we can do that. And because of that, we can tell the story of what the actor is feeling and what they're thinking in a way that you don't get really in almost any other medium. In fact, even in television, there are not as many close-ups as there are in film, because that is really the language of film, and that's what its advantages and that's what it plays to, right? So film is really about telling the story of what's happening inside of the actor's head and what they're feeling and thinking in this format. Now this is a very, very tight close-up. We usually don't go this tight. It's usually from the shoulders up. But what you'll notice in film is a lot of times we move from, and we've gone through these in this way, right? We move from the wide shot into a medium shot that establishes who are going to be the two most important or three most important people in this sequence, and then to close-ups. And the most time is usually spent in close-ups, moving between two actors, maybe three actors who are having an interaction. And we're really getting to see what their thoughts and feelings are as they're emoting through this sequence, right? And that's usually the way it is. Go ahead and watch some films, this next week and think about how does the director take us from these shots? How do they move from the establishing shot into the medium shots and then into the close-ups? And how is that helping us to understand the story and tell what's happening emotionally for these characters on stage? All right. I'm going to skip over these videos here, and we're going to go down to talking about the angle of the camera. So one of the other things that the camera can do, obviously we have a distance, right? So if this is my subject, the camera can get closer or farther away, or we can just perceptually do that by turning the aperture and zooming in on a subject or zooming out on a subject, right? But it's still perceived distance. The other thing that the camera can do is that we can change the angle of the shot, right? So the camera has the ability to be above the subject or below the subject. When the camera is below the subject, as you see behind me, that's called a low angle shot. And this gives us a sense of helplessness, right? It makes the actors look bigger, this environment look bigger than it really is. It makes us, the audience members, feel small, or the subject feel very small and insignificant, right? And so that's what those types of shots are used to do. We can also have the camera above the subject, and that's called a high angle shot, and that gives us a completely different feeling. So here we see this is from, I don't know, it looks like Avengers to me, but I'm not well versed in the universe, so maybe it's something else, Thor maybe. I know that's Thor and Captain America though. So the camera can be way above, as we see here, and now what this gives us a sense of is that the actors are smaller than they are in real life, right? We could go way, way above them and make them look really small, like little ants moving around, right? And this gives us a sense that either we, from the POV of the camera, are looming down on these subjects that are very small, or that, like in this case, something that is very big and dangerous is coming towards these subjects, which is interesting in this shot because we all know that these two characters are very powerful. They're superheroes, right? They have all this amazing power. So to put the camera above them in this way definitely makes the audience feel like something even larger than them, more powerful than them is bearing down on them, and it's something we should be worried about, right? So the low angle shot, again, where the camera sets below the actors and looks up at them, that makes the actors seem bigger, more impressive, the building look more impressive, whatever it is that we're looking at. Or the high angle shot, which is where the camera is above the actors like we see here, that makes the actors look smaller, more insignificant, and more vulnerable, right, to whatever is happening, okay? So again, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. We're going to look at pan and tilt. This is another thing that the camera can do, right? So we can, again, let's just go back just to quickly review. We get the different types of shots. The camera can be closer or farther. This here, we see the camera can also move in two different directions. Pan, which is lateral, that means side to side. That's the one you see hopefully on the left-hand side of your screen. And tilt, this is a vertical movement, up and down movement that the camera can make, right? So the camera has the ability to do both of those off of its tripod or stand or dolly or whatever it's attached to. And this allows us to do different things with the way that we perceive the shot, right? So the camera can start at one end and then pan across and in somewhere else, right? Or the camera can use tilt to start way up high in the sky and then go all the way down, or way low and go all the way up, right? And oftentimes directors use these types of shots to do certain kinds of reveals or to emphasize certain aspects of a story that they're trying to tell. So the thing that always comes to mind for me with tilt, and this is kind of a little bit of cheating with the tilt because it's really a crane shot and some of it with CGI. But in Forrest Gump, we start way up in the clouds and we start following this feather, right, that's coming down. And slowly but surely we end up on the bench with Forrest, right? And we get this sense of like this really big, expansive thing, right, that leads us down into this very, very humble man sitting at a bench and the beginning of this massive story that we're going to hear about, right, but starts very simply in this way, right? It gives us a feeling about the character. He's just kind of this small, almost inconspicuous man sitting on a bench somewhere, right? And so there's a feeling that even though that's not technically tilt because it's a crane shot in, but that the tilt can give us from expansiveness to kind of like very small and mundane things, or we can go the other way, from the very small mundane things all the way up to the expansiveness, right? And then pan is often used in a way too also to kind of give us a feeling. Maybe we're trying to take in a very large landscape, or maybe we're looking at a bunch of different things and then we land on something that's different. So there is a pan that's done in a film, it might be The Great Debaters, where we're panning across people's shoes, right? We're seeing all of these actors standing there, and we see all of their shoes. And we pan, we start at one end, and we see a kind of ratty pair of shoes, and another ratty pair of shoes, and a kind of another ratty pair of shoes. And then we see a really nice pair of dress shoes, right? And then now we move away from the pan, and we actually pull back, and we end up in a wide shot where we see the entire character, right? So it's a way to reveal a difference, a person who's very different in this really unique way through the visual storytelling of it, right? So pan and tilt, these are two things that we can use. Again, pan is moving laterally, side to side, and tilt is moving up and down. And there are ways that directors can use, and camera operators can use the camera to help to tell the story. Another two ways that the camera can move is called dolly or tracking shot. One second. And behind me, you see an example of what this kind of looks like. This is kind of a jerry-rigged version. But this is a camera that has been set on, this is the nice fancy version, right? So this is a track, this is a set of tracks. And usually when you're working on a big film set, these tracks go into big trucks, and they're assembled on the spot, and they can be assembled anywhere. Because they're really just this track this shows metal bars underneath, but oftentimes it's just pieces of 2x4 underneath, almost like a train track set up. And you see that the dolly is set up, that has wheels that run on this track. And then you have the camera on this crane. Now what you don't see at the end is look at where the camera is and then follow back to what you see is kind of a round disc at the end. That is a handle that the camera operator would be using to do two things. Push the dolly forward, right, so that we can get a tracking shot. That's what that means. We're moving the camera and tracking action. Or to also move the crane up and down. So that little handle, that disc, can be used to do that, and we're missing a human person that would be operating that, but that's the way that's operated. So in a dolly or tracking shot, what you have is the camera on some kind of dolly. You see this behind me, right? That's the actual cart or platform or whatever it is that usually has wheels on it. And then a dolly can actually be used separately outside of a track, but the benefits of a track is that you get really, really smooth motion, right? So you might be on asphalt with that dolly, and if you don't have the track there, then you're going to run that dolly across the asphalt or the grass, and you're going to go ka-dunk, 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 right? Which is not anything that a filmmaker wants. So usually we set up these dollies with the track when we want a really smooth progression of the shot. We want it to smoothly follow our actor, smoothly follow the car away, or do any of those things. And you see a lot of that in film. All right. Well, unfortunately, guys, we've had to skip over a lot of the video clips that I would have to kind of show you these things in action, but I think we've explained them sufficiently enough that you kind of understand what they are. Even if you don't, hopefully you wrote them down with the definitions next to them, because that's how you're going to be able to, when you're taking that quiz or the exam, find those terms and study them so that you can answer the questions about them correctly on a quiz. It's going to be on an exam most likely later on in the semester. Well, it's been a wonderful, wonderful first session with you guys. I'm so glad that you guys have typed in. I'm so glad that so many of you have already gone on to do the discussion boards. We've got a wonderful 16 weeks ahead of us where we're going to learn a lot of things. And I just hope you'll tune in next time, and we'll continue on with our journey learning about television, theater, and film. So until next Thursday, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll see you then.